The history of Black America is deeply intertwined with moments of immense struggle and triumph, often marked by systematic oppression and resilience. One such moment occurred during the 19th century when newly freed Black Americans were striving to carve out a life of independence and financial stability after the Civil War. It was in this fragile period of Reconstruction that a bank was founded, appearing as a symbol of hope for Black Americans, the Freedmen's Bank. However, despite its promising beginnings, it would go down in history as one of the most notorious financial disasters, leaving behind a legacy of exploitation and widening the racial wealth gap that persists even today. The Freedmen's Savings and Trust Company, commonly known as the Freedmen's Bank, was established in 1865 with the approval of President Abraham Lincoln. It was created with the goal of providing newly emancipated Black individuals, many of whom were former slaves, with a safe and secure place to save their hard-earned wages. After years of enduring brutal servitude, the promise of financial security and empowerment was an alluring proposition for those looking to build a new life from scratch. The bank emerged during the tail end of the Civil War, a time when over 180,000 Black men had enlisted in the Union Army. These soldiers, who had fought courageously for their freedom, were compensated for their service, albeit significantly less than their white counterparts. Yet, despite the racial pay disparity, many Black soldiers and civilians alike sought to save whatever they could for the future. Banks at that time were reluctant, if not outright hostile, to serving Black clientele. The Freedmen's Bank aimed to change that. The idea was simple and powerful: create a bank that would cater exclusively to Black Americans, offering them a chance to build wealth through savings, which could be passed down to future generations. The bank promised stability, financial education, and a pathway out of poverty for a community that had been systematically denied economic participation. But like many things in history, the reality of the situation was far from the ideal. Freedmen's Bank started with lofty intentions, but quickly devolved into one of the most egregious scams ever perpetrated. The institution attracted the savings of thousands of newly freed Black individuals, many of whom entrusted their entire life's savings to this bank. At its peak, the Freedmen's Bank had 37 branches across the United States and held more than $57 million in today's money, deposited by over 70,000 account holders, most of whom were formerly enslaved. Yet, as the bank grew, so did its mismanagement. The financial managers of the bank, many of whom had little regard for the welfare of their Black clients, began making speculative and risky investments with the depositors' money. They invested in ventures that ultimately failed, leaving the bank unable to cover the withdrawals of its customers. Additionally, the bank's leadership was composed largely of white men, with little input from the very community it was meant to serve. One of the critical turning points came in 1870 when the bank was moved to Washington, D.C., and placed under the control of Henry Cook, a financier with close ties to Wall Street. Cook and his associates, rather than prioritizing the savings of the Black community, saw the bank as a way to enrich themselves. They made investments in speculative real estate ventures, railroad bonds, and other high-risk markets, none of which were transparent to the depositors. In 1874, the bank collapsed, taking with it the life savings of tens of thousands of Black Americans. The Freedmen's Bank had become a monument to broken promises. After the collapse, efforts to recover the lost funds were feeble at best. Despite efforts by abolitionist Frederick Douglass, who was appointed as the bank's president in its final months, the institution was beyond saving. By the time it shuttered its doors, over $3 million, worth hundreds of millions in today's value, had vanished into thin air, leaving the Black depositors with nothing. Many families who had hoped to use their savings to buy land, educate their children, or start businesses were left devastated. The tragedy of the Freedmen's Bank extended far beyond the financial ruin of individual depositors. It instilled a deep sense of distrust toward financial institutions within the Black community, a mistrust that would endure for generations. It also severely curtailed the ability of newly freed Black Americans to establish economic independence, further entrenching the racial wealth gap that persists to this day. Despite the clear evidence of mismanagement and corruption, the U.S. government did little to hold those responsible accountable. There were no serious investigations, no trials, and certainly no restitution for the Black Americans whose futures were derailed. Many have speculated that the lack of intervention was deliberate. Some historians suggest that the state turned a blind eye, either out of apathy toward the plight of Black Americans, or because there were powerful interests who profited from the bank's failure. In any case, the government's failure to act served to exacerbate the economic disparities between Black and white Americans. The collapse of the Freedmen's Bank is more than just a historical footnote. It is a reminder of the systemic challenges that Black Americans faced in their pursuit of economic equality. It is also a cautionary tale about the dangers of unregulated financial institutions and the long-term consequences of exploitation. Today, the legacy of the Freedmen's Bank serves as a painful reminder of what could have been a transformative institution for Black economic empowerment, but instead became a symbol of betrayal. The story of the Freedmen's Bank is essential in understanding the deep-rooted financial inequalities that persist in the United States and serves as a call for continued efforts toward economic justice for all marginalized communities. The history of Black America is filled with countless moments of resilience in the face of unimaginable adversity. The Freedmen's Bank may have failed, but the resolve of those it sought to serve did not. It's a story of betrayal, yes, but also a story of a community that continued to strive for financial independence despite the obstacles placed in its path. The lessons from the Freedmen's Bank continue to resonate as we work toward a more equitable future. In the post-Civil War era, a pivotal moment in the history of Black financial empowerment unfolded in South Carolina and Virginia, where Black soldiers and emancipated slaves were given access to military savings banks. While this was a significant step forward, it also presented challenges. Many newly freed Black individuals were unfamiliar with how banking worked, and some banks held onto their deposits without providing clear guidance on how to manage or access those funds. Recognizing these obstacles, a group of white philanthropists and businessmen sought to address the issue by proposing the creation of a singular, more comprehensive institution, the Freedmen's Savings and Trust Company, or more commonly known, the Freedmen's Bank. Founded in 1865, the Freedmen's Bank was born out of the pressing need to empower Black Americans, offering them a financial institution of their own. This initiative garnered support from various influential figures in the realms of business, religion, and abolitionism, all of whom believed in the importance of economic stability for Black Americans. The bank was also inspired by the broader 19th century savings bank movement, which promoted savings as a pathway to financial independence and societal progress. The bank's mission was clear and ambitious: to help newly emancipated slaves and other Black Americans achieve financial stability and security. It was envisioned as a cornerstone in building a stable future for individuals who had only recently gained their freedom, often without any resources to begin anew. The Freedmen's Bank opened its doors with an inviting message. It allowed people to open an account with as little as 5 cents, and deposits of just $1 or more could earn interest. This accessibility encouraged participation from individuals across various trades and professions. The bank's clientele was impressively diverse, reflecting the growing economic participation of Black Americans in the post-war South. Carpenters, farmers, cooks, nurses, barbers, and others from various walks of life entrusted their money to the bank. It seemed to promise a safer, more reliable financial future. The Freedmen's Bank adopted what appeared to be an open system that was resistant to corruption, setting up branches across southern states and actively encouraging Black Americans to save and grow their wealth. In 1865, alongside the establishment of the Freedmen's Bureau, a government agency created to assist newly freed slaves, President Abraham Lincoln signed a bill that officially established the Freedmen's Bank as an early welfare system. This moment marked a significant milestone for Black Americans, symbolizing a concerted effort to integrate them into the national economy and provide them with the tools necessary to achieve financial independence. The creation of the Freedmen's Bank seemed to align with the moral and political vision of Reconstruction, offering hope to a population that had been systematically excluded from economic participation. Initially headquartered in New York City, The bank soon moved its operations to Washington, D.C. in 1868, where it expanded its reach even further. Notably, about 50% of the bank's staff were black, an extraordinary achievement in a time when racial discrimination permeated nearly every aspect of society. At its height, the bank boasted 37 branches across 17 states, making it one of the largest financial institutions of its kind in the country. Each depositor was given a passbook, which allowed them to track their withdrawals and deposits, a significant innovation that contributed to the transparency of the bank's operations. By 1873, the Freedmen's Bank had reached impressive milestones. Nearly 72,000 individuals had opened accounts, actively saving money and participating in a system designed to help them build their financial futures. The bank became a symbol of hope, not only for its account holders, but also for the broader Black community. Its existence represented a powerful statement about the potential for Black Americans to achieve economic success in a nation that had long denied them such opportunities. Moreover, the success of the Freedmen's Bank contributed to the establishment of an extensive network of savings banks across the United States. By this time, over 670 savings institutions had emerged across the country, reflecting the growth of a savings culture that was intended to benefit all citizens, particularly those who had been historically disenfranchised. For many Black Americans, the Freedmen's Bank was more than just a place to store their money. It was a beacon of possibility, a symbol of self-reliance, and a step toward closing the racial wealth gap. However, as promising as the Freedmen's Bank seemed, its success was tragically short-lived. Despite its early achievements, the bank's leadership made a series of disastrous decisions that would ultimately lead to its downfall. Mismanagement, speculative investments, and corruption crept into the institution, causing it to spiral into financial ruin. The same bank that had inspired hope and trust among Black Americans would soon become synonymous with betrayal and loss. The story of the Freedmen's Bank is a stark reminder of the fragile nature of Reconstruction and the challenges that newly freed Black Americans faced as they sought to build lives of independence and prosperity. What began as a noble endeavor to help a vulnerable community transition into a new era of freedom and financial security ended in a devastating collapse, with long-lasting repercussions for Black economic progress. Today, the Freedmen's Bank serves as both a cautionary tale and a testament to the resilience of Black Americans in the face of systemic failure. It is a reminder of the importance of financial empowerment and the dangers of unchecked institutional mismanagement. While the bank's collapse deepened the racial wealth gap, the aspirations it represented continue to resonate as we strive toward a more equitable financial system for all. The Freedmen's Bank was a groundbreaking institution, truly unique in its focus on the southern United States and its mission to support the financial empowerment of newly freed slaves. At a time when Black Americans faced immense social, political, and economic challenges, this bank offered a beacon of hope, providing a secure place for ex-slaves and their descendants to save money, invest, and build a future. The legacy of the Freedmen's Bank has been preserved through historical records and surviving account registers housed in the National Archives, giving us critical insights into its lasting impact on the lives of its account holders. Experts have meticulously studied over 107,199 accounts from 27 branches of the Freedmen's Bank, cross-referencing this data with the 1870 census to gain a deeper understanding of the bank's influence on the Black community. The findings were remarkable. Households with a Freedmen's Bank account were more likely to demonstrate higher literacy rates, better school attendance, and more stable employment compared to those without accounts. The account holders were also reported to have higher incomes, a factor that contributed to greater financial security and long-term success. The Freedmen's Bank played an instrumental role in improving the financial well-being of its account holders, many of whom were able to save money for important purchases like property or business investments. For those newly emancipated individuals, owning land or starting a business was not only a means of economic survival, but a powerful symbol of independence and self-reliance. Moreover, the bank offered its clients a way to navigate the instability of a regular income, providing them with a stable place to grow their savings despite the challenges of the post-war Southern economy. Beyond its role as a financial institution, The Freedmen's Bank became a stabilizing force within the Black community, contributing to broader social improvements. Higher literacy rates, better school attendance, increased property values, improved incomes, and more job opportunities were among the many benefits that account holders experienced. The bank helped create a pathway to financial literacy, which was essential for people who had only recently been allowed to participate in the formal economy. In this way, the Freedmen's Bank was more than just a place to deposit money. It was a tool for Black Americans to reshape their futures and lay a foundation for generational wealth. The impact of the Freedmen's Bank can still be felt today. Although the institution eventually collapsed due to mismanagement, its early years helped sow the seeds of financial independence and empowerment for thousands of Black families. Many scholars now recognize the Freedmen's Bank as one of the most significant efforts in American history to promote economic justice for a marginalized community. The bank's leadership was also keenly aware of the importance of reaching the broader Black community to ensure its continued success. During its early years, the Freedmen's Bank invested heavily in advertising campaigns aimed at encouraging more people to open accounts. It utilized various forms of media, including pamphlets, cards, circulars, and newspaper ads to spread its message. The bank strategically targeted African American newspapers, understanding the importance of connecting with its audience through trusted channels. Among these was the New National Era, a prominent national newspaper that addressed critical issues within the Black community. The New National Era was particularly influential because it provided a platform for Black voices during a time when mainstream media largely ignored or misrepresented their experiences. In addition to leveraging established newspapers, the Freedmen's Bank created its own monthly publication, the National Savings Bank. This paper served as both a marketing tool and a source of financial education, providing readers with tips on how to save and manage money. At its peak, the National Savings Bank had a monthly circulation of 15,000 copies, reaching households across the United States and contributing to the financial literacy of thousands of Black Americans. The efforts to promote the Freedmen's Bank through various media channels were crucial to its early success. By fostering a culture of saving and financial responsibility, the bank helped Black Americans, many of whom were entering the formal economy for the first time, develop the skills necessary to manage their finances effectively. This outreach also solidified the bank's reputation as a trustworthy institution in a landscape where Black individuals were often exploited or ignored by mainstream banks. Despite the eventual collapse of the Freedmen's Bank, its influence during its early years cannot be overstated. The institution served as a powerful example of how access to financial services can transform lives, helping marginalized communities build wealth, access better education, and secure more stable employment. It was a monumental step toward addressing the economic inequalities that had been entrenched for centuries, though it also highlighted the importance of proper management and oversight in ensuring the long-term success of such initiatives. As we reflect on the history of the Freedmen's Bank, it is important to acknowledge both its successes and its shortcomings. While its ultimate failure left many Black families devastated, the bank's initial promise and its impact on the lives of its account holders serve as a reminder of the power of financial empowerment. It also highlights the resilience of the Black community, who, despite facing systemic obstacles, continued to seek opportunities for advancement and self-sufficiency. To keep stories like this alive and to explore more about the rich history of Black Americans, we invite you to support us by subscribing to our channel and giving this video a like. By building a strong community around these stories, we can continue to uncover and share the lessons from history that shape our present and future. Branch managers of the Freedmen's Bank played a pivotal role in promoting the institution by engaging directly with communities across the South. They reached out to people in schools, churches, and beneficial societies, creating a grassroots movement to encourage Black Americans to trust the bank with their hard-earned money. Teachers, in particular, became key advocates, helping collect deposits from children and introducing the concept of saving money at an early age. This strategic community-based approach, coupled with rapid expansion, contributed to the bank's remarkable growth. By the end of 1872, over 70,000 accounts had been opened, and the bank held nearly for $1 million in deposits. Despite these promising beginnings, the success of the Freedmen's Bank was short-lived. Behind the scenes, mismanagement, corruption, and fraud were festering, ultimately leading to one of the greatest betrayals of Black Americans in the post-Civil War era. The collapse of the Freedmen's Bank in 1874 left over 61,000 depositors devastated, with the bank owing them a staggering $3 million, equivalent to over $70 million today. This wasn't simply a case of incompetence. It was a deliberate and malicious scheme to exploit the money entrusted by Black individuals, many of whom had sacrificed greatly to accumulate even modest savings. The institution that was supposed to symbolize financial empowerment for African Americans became a symbol of betrayal and systemic exploitation. The collapse of the Freedmen's Bank marked a turning point for Black economic progress, with repercussions that would be felt for generations. For many Black families, the loss of their savings was not just a financial blow. It shattered their dreams of owning land, investing in businesses, or securing a future for their children. This financial setback contributed to the widening racial wealth gap that still persists in America today. Instead of being remembered as a force for good, the Freedmen's Bank is now synonymous with fraud and exploitation, and its downfall laid the foundation for the enduring economic disparities between Black and white Americans. But how did such a colossal scam unfold? And why were Black individuals so vulnerable to this form of exploitation? The roots of this tragic event lie in the systemic racism and disregard for Black people that persisted even after the abolition of slavery. Despite the legal promises of freedom and equality, the reality for many newly freed Black Americans was one of continued marginalization and exclusion. Institutions and societal structures were slow to change, leaving Black individuals vulnerable to exploitation by those in positions of power. The Freedmen's Bank, which had been designed to offer financial protection, instead became an instrument of their undoing. During this era, racism was deeply entrenched in every aspect of American society, creating an environment in which the aspirations and welfare of Black communities were consistently devalued. White business leaders and politicians often viewed Black Americans as inferior, and this perception paved the way for exploitation on a grand scale. Those who orchestrated the collapse of the Freedmen's Bank took advantage of the trust and aspirations of Black depositors. Knowing that the institutional protections afforded to white Americans were not available to their Black counterparts. The scale of this fraud was not simply a matter of individual greed. It was emblematic of the broader societal disregard for Black lives. Even as the Freedmen's Bank expanded and attracted more depositors, there was little oversight or accountability. Black Americans were left unprotected by the very government and financial institutions that were supposed to safeguard their interests. The state, which should have intervened to prevent such widespread exploitation, was either unwilling or unable to act, hindered by the deeply rooted prejudices of the time. The collapse of the Freedmen's Bank left a deep scar on Black communities across the United States. It wasn't just about the financial loss. It was a profound betrayal of trust. For many, the bank had represented a beacon of hope in an otherwise hostile world. Its failure reinforced the message that even in the realm of financial progress, Black Americans were not allowed to succeed. The legacy of this exploitation has endured, contributing to the historical injustices that continue to reverberate through contemporary society. Understanding why and how this massive scam was allowed to happen is critical to understanding the broader context of racial inequality in America. The Freedmen's Bank was supposed to be a lifeline for newly freed slaves and their descendants, offering them a path toward economic independence and security. Instead, it became a tool for their financial destruction. This event highlights not just the vulnerabilities of Black Americans in the post-war era, but also the broader systemic issues that allowed such exploitation to flourish. The lessons of the Freedmen's Bank are as relevant today as they were in the 19th century. It serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked power, corruption, and systemic racism. It also underscores the need for robust institutions that genuinely protect marginalized communities and promote true economic equality. While the Freedmen's Bank may have failed, the desire for financial empowerment and self-sufficiency among Black Americans did not. Even in the face of immense obstacles, the resilience of Black communities has persisted, continuing the fight for justice and equality. By examining the tragic history of the Freedmen's Bank, we can better understand the roots of today's racial wealth gap and the long-term effects of systemic exploitation. It is a story not only of failure, but also of the courage and determination of those who sought to build a better future for themselves and their families despite the odds stacked against them. The lessons from this history are invaluable as we continue to work toward a more just and equitable society for all. One of the most striking elements to emerge from the history of the Freedmen's Bank is the pervasiveness of systemic racism. This deeply entrenched problem not only allowed for the marginalization of Black communities, but also fostered an environment where they were consistently exploited, particularly in financial matters. The collapse of the Freedmen's Bank serves as a potent reminder of how systemic racism can infiltrate even the most well-intentioned institutions, resulting in disastrous consequences for the most vulnerable. It underscores the urgent need to confront systemic racism head-on, not just as a relic of the past, but as a continuing issue that requires our collective attention. Addressing this complex issue involves a deep examination of societal structures, policies, and attitudes. We must identify and dismantle remnants of discriminatory practices that still exist today. By unraveling the historical threads of systemic racism, we can gain valuable insights into how such harmful systems were allowed to persist for so long. It compels us to be vigilant against repeating these mistakes in both the present and future. The lessons learned from this tragic chapter in Black history also remind us of the paramount importance of building a society grounded in dignity, fairness, and justice for every individual, regardless of their race or background. The Freedmen's Bank collapse wasn't just a financial failure. It was a moral and ethical failure that continues to resonate in the modern context. This history calls for a reevaluation of societal values and a genuine commitment to fostering inclusivity in all aspects of life. It's not enough to simply acknowledge the wrongs of the past. We must actively work toward dismantling the existing barriers that still impede equal opportunities and treatment for marginalized groups. This involves reforming policies and institutions that perpetuate inequality, ensuring that all individuals have an equal chance at financial independence and stability. While historical wrongs can never be undone, we can make strides toward healing by working together to create a more just and equitable society. The systemic disregard for Black people in the 19th century was not an isolated occurrence. It was part of a larger societal attitude that devalued the lives and contributions of Black individuals. The Freedmen's Bank is just one of many examples where this disregard manifested in the form of financial exploitation. As we examine this history, it's worth asking whether white Americans were ever truly honest with Black Americans, particularly in matters of economic equality. Even today, many believe that financial exploitation of Black communities continues in various forms. From predatory lending practices to housing discrimination and wage gaps, Black Americans are still facing structural disadvantages that limit their economic mobility. The legacy of institutions like the Freedmen's Bank serves as a stark reminder of the importance of fighting against these exploitative practices. While society has made progress, the persistence of financial inequality suggests that the work is far from finished. So why was there such disregard for Black people, especially during the Reconstruction era? The roots of this disregard can be traced back to centuries of racial prejudice and the dehumanization of Black individuals. Despite the legal end of slavery, many white Americans still viewed Black people as inferior and unworthy of the same rights and opportunities as their white counterparts. This mindset, deeply embedded in societal norms, allowed exploitation to flourish with little to no repercussions for those responsible. Institutions like the Freedmen's Bank were not immune to these prejudices, and the bank's collapse illustrates how systemic racism infiltrated even those spaces that were supposed to empower Black communities. As we reflect on these issues, it's important to ask, can white Americans ever stop exploiting Black people? While this question may be provocative, It highlights the deep mistrust that has built up over generations due to exploitation and systemic inequality. True progress will require more than just surface-level changes. It will necessitate a fundamental shift in how we view race, power, and economics. It will require a commitment to justice, accountability, and a shared responsibility to right the wrongs of the past while preventing them from repeating in the future. We encourage you to continue engaging with this topic and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Do you think it's possible for society to move beyond these harmful legacies? What steps do you think are necessary to achieve financial equity for Black Americans? Your input is vital as we continue these conversations. And if you'd like to support our efforts in uncovering and sharing important pieces of Black history, please consider subscribing. Don't forget to hit the bell icon to stay updated on our latest videos. Together, we can continue to build awareness, share stories, and push for the change that is long overdue. You can also explore more of our videos that delve deeper into these critical issues.